Welcome everyone to another episode of our podcast, broadcasting live from the vibrant heart of Cambridge, right here at the Sound Lounge. I'm your host, Dane Clark, and as always, we're here to bring you stories that resonate with the rhythm of our community. Today, we have a very special guest joining us, Eileen Hawkins from Neighbourhood Support. Eileen, it's fantastic to have you here. There are some people who don't know much about Neighbourhood Support, so if you could please share a bit about your incredible work you do with our neighbourhood.
Well, I don't know whether everybody knows either, but Cambridge Neighbourhood Support and the Community Patrol are both operated by a trust here in Cambridge, and that trust has been running for the last 14 years. So that's the Safer Cambridge Community Trust. And the main aim of the trust is to try and make Cambridge's town and rural people feel well connected and safer in their communities. We work really closely with the police, with civil defence and with fire and emergency, and we encourage neighbourhoods to build really strong networks together so that they have a strong and supportive, close kind of feel in their neighbourhood, like they've got a community around them. And then we also take the messages from our partners and those educational messages, and we take them out to the community to help them to be safer.
Can you give me an example of how this might work in a neighbourhood?
Okay, Dane. Well, first of all, I've got to say that loneliness is a rapidly escalating problem in our communities. And this is not just for older people, this is also for younger people. In fact, younger people are more highly represented in the stats for loneliness. It's a real problem. And there's research that I have been looking at recently which has found that connection with others is just as important for our physical health as is eating healthily and exercising. So connection is a vital thing for all of us, but it seems to be getting harder and harder as our communities people are busy, they come home, stay home and don't tend to get out and connect with other people. And we try to say to people, look, connecting doesn't have to be a big deal. Don't wait until your lawn is freshly mowed and your house is renovated before you invite somebody over. Just keep it low-key, keep it casual, because the most important thing is to take those opportunities for connection wherever you find them. And building those strong, close neighbourhoods is a real opportunity that's just right there on your doorstep.
Yeah.
Also, those small touches are really important. It's just the wave out in the neighbourhood, wandering over if you see your neighbour in the garden and you're in the garden too, wander over for a 5-minute chat. And if you don't want to invite people over, just, say to people in your neighbourhood, look, Saturday morning, how about we all meet at the local cafe, 10 a.m, easy. Again, that connection with others is really vital. So I just want to underline that before I give you a more specific example. But I will tell you, though, now about our neighbourhood emergency planning with a specific neighbourhood. So these people live in a cul-de-sac in Cambridge here, and they were creating one of our neighbourhood emergency plans together. So this is where we're encouraging neighbourhoods to be really prepared for emergencies and to work together to make that happen. So people there are discussing, who has medical skills, who is a veterinarian, then what kind of equipment they have in the neighbourhood. Do they have a generator? Somebody had an independent water supply. And they're putting all of these kind of skills and resources into one neighbourhood plan. Yeah. Really great to see that happening, and we encourage that a lot. But then after all of this talk, then people start to talk about the drain at the end of their cul-de-sac and the fact that they're worried that it might overflow and there's a tree leaves going down into that drain. And they start to talk to each other about what they could do about it possibly. And next minute they are agreeing to meet up the following evening and get together and have a look at this drain and see what they can do together. So already as a neighbourhood, they're working together, they're planning ahead, and neighbourhoods like this will have really strong relationships which will put them in really good stead in some kind of civil disaster or just on a daily basis.
Also, what other campaigns do you operate at Neighbourhood Support?
Okay, Dane. So alongside our connection work, we're also running some first aid courses. We've been lucky enough to get a bit of funding, and we're running some heavily subsidised first aid courses, which we're rolling out to the community. We've had 200 places at just $35 each, and people can still book to those if they want to complete first aid. Yep. And our purpose for that is really just to raise the level of safety in the community, one person at a time. The next thing we've got going on is our Children's Citizenship Program. So we are going into schools and early childhood centres, and we're talking to children about their role as a citizen and what they might contribute now and how they could contribute in the future as well to our community. We've also been going out to rural groups because we go out often to our rural neighbourhoods as well, and we've been talking to them about the new firearm legislation and how they can work with that. And again, as I mentioned before, we're rolling out our neighbourhood emergency plans in several neighbourhoods too.
Yeah.
But of course we have our community patrol. Now our community patrol is one of the only community patrols that is out for 7 nights per week. And they work closely with our local police. They're often helping the police to find wanted persons or finding stolen cars. They check that business premises are locked up, and they're often chasing off suspicious characters too. So they'll come along and there'll be a car parked in a place that seems that they shouldn't be, so in some dark little area in a street, in a commercial area, and as soon as they see that patrol coming along, they'll take off. So we get the feeling that the patrol is really preventing a lot of crime in that way. Yep. Yeah. Now, Dane, we couldn't do our work without our supporters and our partners, and we really value our relationship with our local police. We work really well together to increase the levels of safety and to educate around safety as well. And we're lucky today to have our local Cambridge Community Liaison Officer to answer some questions that we often hear from the community. So I'd like to welcome now our Senior Constable Deb Hann, and she's going to answer some questions for us today. So welcome, Deb.
Thank you, Eileen. It's a great opportunity to be here.
Okay, Deb, so can you tell us what can we do as individuals to make our community safer?
You've mentioned that word connection, and connection is so important when it comes to crime prevention. The police alone cannot single-handedly solve crime. It is something that takes a partnership with our community, and that means every part of our community. When it comes to our homes and dwellings, our neighbours are our most capable guardians. And by that I mean people who can look out for us and be aware when something is going right, but also, more importantly, when something is going wrong. Our neighbours are people that they get to know our patterns, they get to know our routines. They know which cars often come to our house. They know which people, it might be our grandchildren visiting once a month. And they get to know what is the right picture for us. And they are also the people who notice when something suspicious is happening. So perhaps if someone is jumping over our fence, if there's someone walking around our property, or just a car parked in the driveway, particularly in those rural areas as well, just something that doesn't quite fit the normal picture. The neighbours are the people then that can call police or let us know that something's going wrong, and so they are very important when it comes to crime prevention. So how do we build that connection? You've already said, you've hit it on the head. Neighbourhood support groups are fantastic, particularly in urban areas, but also in those rural communities. And I'm really happy with the partnership that police have with Neighbourhood Support Group in Cambridge. Neighbourhood support's not only about social connection, as you've said, but also working towards preparedness for those unforeseen circumstances such as civil emergencies. And what else can we do to make Cambridge a safer place? We can target harden our properties. What does that mean? Criminals are opportunists, and so we want to make sure that we remove that opportunity. We can do that around our house by making sure that we have good locks in place, security measures generally taken, including CCTV if possible, that we have security lights because criminals do not like to be illuminated when they're in the middle of the act. We can increase the risk of detection through measures like CCTV or the connections with our neighbours. And we can also, more importantly, perhaps most importantly, remove the attractants. Hide valuable items. Do not have them clearly visible through windows and ranch sliders. And also make sure you take a note of the serial numbers for all of your valuable items and appliances. Make sure that you keep keys separate from any cars or vehicles, including farm vehicles. So often we see that a quad bike is taken when the keys were not on the bike, but they weren't that far away, just on a wall in the shed. So if we can remove the attractants, that means that we're less likely to be a target. And it means that Cambridge as a whole isn't a weaker link and isn't seen as an attractive place for criminals to come and do their business. When it comes to other matters, we've got road safety, and we all know about driving to the conditions, keeping to the speed limit, and taking breaks on those longer trips. But the key thing overall is that we need to be willing to report what is happening. We need to be aware of what is happening around us, because if we're not looking for it, then perhaps we won't see it. And if we don't see it, we can't make those very important calls to police for assistance and stop a crime in the act.
Thanks, Deb. I'll often hear people say, though, look, I didn't report it. I didn't report what I saw because the police are just too busy to deal with it, or it's just too minor. So when should people phone 111?
Effective policing comes from that information. So calls to police, whether through 111 or our 105 line or star 555, every single call gives us a vital piece of information. If something is happening right in front of you, then 111 is the number to call. Please don't second guess yourself. We don't want people thinking, is this an emergency? Should I make that call? If offending is in progress now, then you should be ringing 111. The other thing we get is that people will think, someone else will have called. And if everyone is thinking that, then perhaps there may not be any calls. And the more calls we get about a certain situation, the more information we get, because everyone's view of that situation is different. And some people will have background knowledge about the locations or people involved that simply others won't. So the more calls we get, the better. And it certainly gives us a great idea of the severity of what's happening and just helps corroborate information so we know where to go and what sort of response to deploy. If something has already happened, for example, if you come back from a weekend away and find that someone has graffitied your fence, or hopefully not, or perhaps a burglary has happened, the offender's long gone, there's nothing happening at the time, we still need to know about that. But 105 is then your number to go to. So that is for anything that has happened more historically. We have 105 that you can phone, but we also have the website 105.police.govt.nz. And an advantage of the going online and using the website is that you can upload any supporting photos or information, for example, bank statements, if it's a fraud matter. Police would rather discover that something that could be suspicious is legitimate than miss the chance to catch a burglar, because burglars, like any other criminals, they don't just commit one crime. And so if we can catch a criminal in the act, we can prevent further victims and further incidents from happening. We had a situation when I was in Hamilton once where someone was driving down quite a main road and they saw a teenager jumping over a fence into a property. The property had long grass, it didn't particularly look occupied, and so they called police. When police attended, we were thinking it could be a burglar. It turned out to be legitimate. It turned out to be the teenage son of the homeowner. But again, as I've said, we would rather have found out that to be the cause than to miss catching someone in the act of a burglary. So whether you call, whichever number you call, the main thing is to report. Report the crime that's happening, and the more people that report an incident, the more information we have.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Now, something that other people may contact you about, but I'm often disturbed by young people skidding and sliding on the road in my area. So what can I do about that?
Boy racer activity is a very hot topic, particularly in Cambridge at the moment, and it is one that causes a lot of frustration for the public, I know. It also causes noise pollution, it damages the road, and where there is one, there are often many. What you can do is, again, as I said, make that call to police, because often people will hear it and then no one will ring. We need you to get as much information as possible. If it's happening on the road outside your house and you're able to see the actual activity as it's happening, then we want to know about vehicles, the vehicle description, the vehicle registration plate, anything distinctive about a vehicle, for example, a large decal on the back window. If possible, have a look at the driver. Is there just one person in the car, or are there passengers as well? And if you can get a description of exactly what's happening, and if possible even get a video of the activity in progress, then that means that we can follow up on that. In some situations, police won't be able to attend at the time because boy racer activity is often something that happens for a short space of time and then boom, the car's gone. But if we have those key pieces of information, then we can follow up, and with our legislation we can impound the cars and we can hold the offenders to account. The main thing, again, it comes back to making those calls and getting as much information and providing that information to police.
Okay, that's great, thank you. And so what do I do, though, if I see dangerous driving in general? I'm travelling home on the weekend or something like that. Would I be calling 111 then, or what would I be doing?
If the driving that you're seeing is something which is likely to cause harm to a personal property, for example, overtaking into oncoming traffic where a head-on collision is a very real possibility, then a call to 111 is the one to make. In my personal experience, people tend to follow behind a car and assess its behaviour for up to 10 or 15 minutes before making that call. And so if they're worried enough about to make the call, then 111 is the number to phone. Again, the more people that call, the more information we get. And if possible, if you can follow the vehicle or at least keep it in sight to give us updates on its location and its ongoing continuing behaviour, that can be gold when it comes to prosecution. But prosecution is the word, because as with many crimes, we are powerless to do a lot without members of the public being willing to stand up and to make those statements to us and to be prepared to stand up in court and give evidence as required to support charges of careless driving or dangerous driving. If you have inconsiderate driving where someone, for example, cuts you off just as a one-off, then Staff 555 may be more appropriate. But for the dangerous ones likely to cause an accident, then 111.
Okay, thank you. Another curly kind of a question I have, or a curly situation, is that people don't know what to do, to help a family harm situation. Sometimes, you might hear things from your neighbours next door and you are worried about it, but you don't necessarily want to get involved, boots and all yourself. What would you advise?
Family harm is a problem in our society, or in every society, I think, and it's something which is very close to my heart because it is something that happens behind closed doors often, and often the victims of family harm are not able to speak out themselves. Family harm is something which also escalates over time, and so without an intervention, those patterns of abuse just get more and more serious. So when we're hearing things in our neighbourhood, it's important that, again, we let the police know. Some people think, it's just a verbal argument, it happens every weekend. You can tell when they've been drinking or those sort of behaviours because you give it 10 minutes and away they go, there's the yelling. Let's try and intervene and stop it at that yelling point, because we know that, if you don't have that intervention, then yelling can lead to property damage, holes being punched in walls, and it can also lead to physical harm, and often escalate to homicides in the worst case scenario. So whenever a family harm call is attended by police, we will put in a report to the ISR team. So every single family harm has a report that goes in. The ISR team is the Integrated Safety Response Team, and it's made up of key government and non-government organisations such as police, Oranga Tamariki, Kāinga Ora, and community agencies. And those are the agencies who are best able to intervene and put supports in place around counselling and other mechanisms. In Cambridge, our Cambridge Community House is one of those key agencies in delivering a family harm response, and we've seen some really good outcomes from that.
Oh, that's great to know. Thank you. So, Deb, we all really appreciate the work that the police do, but we know you're always looking for new recruits. So if somebody does want to join the police, what do they need to do?
You're right, Eileen. Police are recruiting now for most areas of New Zealand. I've been in the police for 20 years. I can say it's a great job. I'm very passionate about it, and no 2 days are ever the same. It's also a job that offers a broad career path. Everyone starts out as a probationary constable, but there are many different paths from that point onwards in which your career can go. There are also options for flexible employment. As a mother, police have enabled me to continue in a job I love whilst having the flexibility of rostering to meet the needs of my family. And I've always felt supported. So if someone wants to join the police, for a start they need to be at least 17 years old to apply, and 18 but when you start police college. But there's no upper age limit. For me, policing was not my first career choice, and I moved into police when I was in my early 30s, and I haven't looked back. So it is something that should always be considered, and I'd encourage people to take the step. The qualities that we're looking for in our new officers are outstanding communication skills, empathy for others, a commitment and integrity, and those all-important problem-solving abilities. A sense of humour is also pretty important because we see a lot of things and come across a lot of different situations. To enhance these qualities, it's always good to have some sort of work in the community behind you. Perhaps volunteer work for a local community group. Maybe they could join our community patrol. Or a sports team, and other examples where you might have mentored people in the past. You must be a New Zealand or Australian citizen or have New Zealand permanent residency to apply to the New Zealand Police. And you've got to be able to speak, read, write and listen in English. Physical fitness is key because you will be required to complete physical fitness tests and maintain those throughout your career with the police. Yes, I even did mine recently. You have to have good eyesight and a full New Zealand driver's licence because, let's face it, you can't drive a patrol car without one. So, as a first step, go to the New Cops website, www.newcops.gov.nz, and find out the full information there. You can also see the recruitment process and get an idea of all of the steps that you will need to take. But definitely, if you've been thinking about it for a while, now is a great time to apply to join the police. And I look forward to seeing you at college sometime soon.
Wonderful. Thanks, Deb. And that brings us to the end of today's insightful journey through community engagement and support here at the Sound Lounge, Cambridge. A big thank you to our exceptional guest, Deb Hann, our local community liaison officer, and Eileen Hawkins from Cambridge Neighbourhood Support. Thanks, guys, for sharing your invaluable perspectives and expertise with us. I believe community policing and neighbourhood support are the cornerstones of a vibrant and safe society. And it's very clear from our conversation today how dedicated individuals like Deb and Eileen are to fostering those ideas right here in Cambridge. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more engaging discussions and insights. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and keep spreading positivity in your communities. Goodbye for now.